Hello viewers, Super GT here. Welcome to Super GT. Yes, that's right. We are driving the GT500 Super GT cars around Fuji, this week's daily race C on Gran Turismo 7. This is my path to perfection. By perfection, I mean something vaguely good, better than what I'm about to do in this race. Now, to kick things off, we're in our natural habitat, 6th position, would you believe? And we're going to try and make our way up the order, as is basically the point of racing if you're not in the lead. Now here, go for a gap. It looks like there was definitely a gap there, but I kind of sideswipe this poor soul alongside me there. Have to back out, give him back the position. That wasn't really quite on there. So we're going to have to go again, try to find another way past this guy. Now Fuji, in these cars, it is quite a tricky circuit to overtake on, but there are certainly some chances, especially I would say, into this final section of the circuit. And one of the difficulties with this car is we look for another move here into the right of turn 13, not quite going to work. One of the difficulties around this track, especially I would say in the first and middle sector, really is the dirty air. So if you're too close to one of the cars in front, you almost lose control. If you get too close to the car in front, you do begin just to lose a little bit of aerodynamic downforce. And that's very noticeable in these Group 2 cars, which are very quick. And they do have quite a fair amount of aero. Now, it's kind of this corner here where you do notice that, although we are keeping quite close to this guy. He's definitely just slightly off the pace. We're going to try around the outside here. Is it going to work? Not quite. But we're going to get a decent exit off of the hairpin. Tuck as far into the slip zone as we can, looking into the braking zone of turn number 10. Looking for that gantry on the right. There it is. Braking just underneath that. And we're going to slip our way up the inside and claim 5th position. Jolly good stuff there. Let's concentrate on the guy in front, as it looked as though track limits were abused to some extent. A couple of pixels over the white line. And he has been slapped on the wrist with a 0.5 second penalty. So presumably we would go past him at some point on this lap. But let's see if we can get past him earlier than the penalty zone. No, this was a little bit weird here because he turned to this turn, turned in, then he kind of turned out, gave the space. I was like, okay then, fair enough. I guess I'll just go through a bit of a dispute on the exit, but we get through and move up into 4th position, 6.7 seconds away from the lead at this time here. About 7 seconds, let's say, at the end of this lap. And you can see one of those pixels in the distance is 3rd place. 3.3 seconds in front. Let's try to erode that gap and bring it down. At the end of lap number 4, it went down to 6.3 to the lead and 2 seconds to the car in front. Then 1.4 seconds to the car in front. We were definitely gaining, setting slightly better lap times into the low 131s. By lap 9, as you can see, he's well within sight. Only 0.8 seconds in front. And the pressure was surely beginning to mount as I was getting closer and closer. But eventually, the pressure or this curb got to him with a very, very sad moment. The Jedi Jimbo 7 there, getting vaporised into the Shadow Realm, a move up into a podium position. And at the end, I was 5.5 seconds away from the lead. And at one point I was about 7 seconds. So I had the pace to match the leader there, which I think was pretty good. But what I wanted to do here is improve my qualifying time. And this has always been one of my weaknesses. Trying to be a 1:29.493, which is not too bad, but I can definitely do better. What I did was I loaded this Ghost with an offset of 0.1 seconds. It's the Ghost of Nisman R32. It's a 1 minute 28.8, and I knew that if I got the right lap without a penalty, like there, then I could break into the 128s, and that would be well within 1 second of the #1 time in the world, and therefore I think it would be a solid lap time. So with a fair amount of practice, as you can see, well, it actually wasn't a huge amount of laps, but what I was doing, I was just really trying to gauge where I was losing time compared to the Ghost, and a lot of it was in the final 2 corners, as you can see here. I was pretty good through the fast sweeping corners. It was actually the slow corners at the end of the lap where I was suffering the most. But I brought my lap time down to a 1:29.3, then a 29.2, and then I did another 29.2, slightly slower. So that was 3 laps within 0.03 of a second. So even if the speed wasn't quite there just yet, the consistency definitely was. A little bit later doing a 1:29.1. This lap here is going to be my best one. Into turn 1, braking just before the 100 board, down into first gear, and this is a trick a lot of the top drivers are using, going down 1 extra gear to get extra rotation in the car, to get the car to turn a bit better through the turns. And the other thing really with this car is just really believing in the downforce. Through this corner especially, 100R, you can carry so much speed given the downforce that this car produces. With the left-hander at turn 2, you can get on the power earlier than you think maybe. Again, it does have a lot of grip on the exit. Now for this one, coming down the hill, braking level with the shadow pretty much, just under the gantry, down into the first gear, really knowing your track limits through this section, especially on this exit curb here. You can go 2 wheels onto the red and white, 2 onto the green, and you're fine. And then into my worst section of the track. In fact, I think I've gained on the Ghost from the beginning of the lap. You can see here, the Ghost will just edge away slightly on the exit of turn 15. How about turn 16? I didn't take the best line there. I do gain slightly on the exit. I lost quite a lot on the entry. But overall, I think I lost a tiny amount to the Ghost over the course of that lap. So this is going to be a 1:28. Let's see exactly what it's going to be. 28.8. And it's a lap I was very pleased with. It took me maybe 10 minutes to achieve that. And it put me in a fairly good sort of spot there with a lot of my friends into the 1:28 lap times. So I was in fairly good company here for the next race, towards the front of the pack, starting in 5th. So we've got GTHR Digit just in front, Key, Tarrant, Distinct Jones. So lots of very fast players just in front. And I wasn't quite able to keep up with them in the race. I was able to keep up with Digit for maybe 4 laps. But by the end I'd wind, who's actually the current lap record holder this week, as I record this at least. And I finished in 5th, just under 7 seconds away from the lead after 18 minutes of racing. So against some really quick players, I think that was decent. Now for the next one, I thought I'd try an alternative strategy. In the regulations, it says that you have to use the medium tyre. That's fair enough. Most people are using the medium tyre and not bothering with the pit stop. But what I thought I'd do is I'd go onto the soft tyre, see if I can push, and then maybe pit at the very end for 1 lap on the medium tyres. So Digit here was probably wondering how the hell I was so quick all of a sudden, when in the previous race I couldn't quite challenge him. In fact, down into turn 10 here, he went defensive, perhaps wondering how I was so fast, so quickly. But the answer was the soft tyres. These tyres are maybe 1 second or a bit over a second a lap quicker. And on this lap here, you see they're moving into second, and then challenging for first, although it didn't last very long because on the exit curb here, we had a fatal moment, which is something that many of us have done before. So that race ended in catastrophe. But how about this one? This one I got put into a slightly lower level lobby courtesy of the prior rage quit from the previous race. And this was a perfect opportunity to try out the soft tyre strategy. So I was at the front, already 2.7 seconds in the lead at the end of the first lap. At the end of the second lap, 4 seconds in the lead, setting a 1:30.4, which is about a second a lap quicker than what I was able to do on the medium tyres. At the end of lap 7, I was nearly 11 seconds and into the lead, setting a lap time in the 1:29s that time around. So that's about 1.5 seconds quicker than what I can manage on the medium tyre. So the gap was building. I wasn't quite sure exactly how long, a pit stop would take. But the grip was absolutely unreal. I was getting some pretty good lap times. At this point here, nearly 15 seconds ahead of second place. And funnily enough, he pitted because he was also on the soft tyre, so this wasn't really a representative test. So I thought that he was on the medium. But eventually, at the end of lap 11, with a 26 lap lead to the next driver who's actually on the medium tyres, came in on the medium. And we come in, the Nissan boys do a fantastic job as ever. We leave the pit lane, and we have probably our biggest mistake of the whole race, going a little bit wide there into the first corner on the cold tyres, on the medium tyres. As the track does get a little bit colder at the end of this race. As you can see, the sun kind of just sets a little bit. And eventually we win the race with a 10-second lead. Total time of 18 minutes and 21 seconds. Now, interestingly, when I did this other race just a moment ago, where I finished 5th, I did it in about 18 minutes and 19 seconds. And therefore, the time difference isn't too big. But the main question you all have, I'm sure, is how does Scotch Egg feature in all of this? Well, we're going to log on to our Scott Speed account, bring back our favourite American. Now, I couldn't even afford to buy the Nissan Nismo that you need for this race. So I had to do a couple of circuit experiences before I could then buy the car. There it is, beautiful stuff. So let's jump in, starting 14th on the grid, no qualifying required. Donald Bump just behind us on the grid, quite interestingly. So after his stint as the President of the States, jumping into some daily races on Gran Turismo 7. Absolutely incredible scenes here. This is just absolutely crazy content. So, starting 14th on the grid, we already have our first casualty of the race. And, I was there barely 5 minutes ago in that very barrier after just clipping the edge of the curb. And, Fuji's actually quite, I was about to say famous, but I guess you could say infamous for its death curbs. And this guy, I have no idea what he was doing, dawdling on the racing line, going about half speed. And the stewards obviously really don't look upon me very favourably today, or Scott Speed at all. They're trying to slow him down, he's obviously too OP, and they've slapped Scott Speed with a 2-second penalty. Absolutely shameful stuff. So that is not an ideal start to the race. We have gained 2 positions, but here we're going to lose them very quickly after we serve that penalty. That guy goes flying through. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen that crash actually happened in real life. Super GT cars at Fuji. Very, very crazy crash indeed, and luckily actually the drivers were okay that were involved. But luckily here, owing to it just being a video game and just some pixels on a screen, no one's actually going to get hurt with any of these collisions, which is good news, which is really encouraging. Now, as we take 13th place off with the Canadian there, you can see a big group just in front, and it was my job really just to try to... Oh, this guy just sends it back up the inside, kind of wasting everyone's time here, both losing chunks of time to each other, overtaking each other back and forth. So I retake 13th. Now, finally, tried to catch up with that group in front, which includes Donald Bump. Guy off side of the track there, getting himself a 2-second penalty, driving really wide. We're going to go up the inside here and claim 12th. Okay, let's just whip it forward a little bit here. One car serving a penalty. Let's take his slipstream. Move up into 11th. Another car going quite slow here. And they are going to go defensive into turn 1. Fair enough. Can we get the old switcheroo? No, we can't. Not quite on this occasion. It's quite a hard car to get the old switcheroo, to be honest. And another tip I'd give, perhaps, for this kind of car, it's not always possible, but if it is possible, like right now, trying to not drive directly behind another car when going through long corners, really just to avoid the dirty air. It's not always possible to do that, but if it is, you can do it. It might sort of help you with your speed through some of the turns, especially the long, fast corners. So dropping down towards turn 10, trying to spot our braking point. I'm not close enough to go for an overtake here. It's really a case of just settle in and just be patient. There are plenty of opportunities actually at the end of this lap with these long curved braking points. We're going to go into this one, turn 13, chuck up the inside. Normally you'd wait for turn 15, which is this left-hander here, or turn 16, the final corner. And this final corner just really lends itself to overtaking, but to be fair, sometimes it's best to wait and stick behind the car in front and just wait for the slipstream on the main straight. But anyway, we are in 10th position, end of lap number 3, 9 laps remaining, 10 seconds off the lead, so it's going to be very difficult to win this one, given that we still have to pass 9 cars as well. And at this moment, as we enter the braking zone for turn number 1, lap number 4, you can see we have a nice little gaggle of 3 cars involving Josh and Donald Bump and TCR Diathon. Yes, so there's 4 of us here in a nice little group. Interestingly, Josh has gone for the Honda, going to nip up the inside. That move is possible. He's actually kept a nice line around the outside there, to be fair to him, and it's going to give him the inside here for the left of the hairpin. So Josh up the inside, bit of contact there between myself and the TCR driver, and Josh getting slapped with a 3-second penalty. So the stewards are really rather drunk, I think, or they're smoking something, I'm not quite sure what, because I'm sure, like many of you who have done this race this week, you may well have been slapped with some inconsiderate penalties, it must be said. So a bit of a moment on the exit there, as we get a fair whack of oversteer with the power, but we just retake ninth from the Canadian driver. I'm going to chuck up the inside here? No, not quite. Like I just said, I'm going to take my own advice from about a lap ago, which is to remain behind and wait for the straight and get the slipstream. And so Super GT actually listens to Super GT, amazingly enough, and he's going to get an overtake in a Super GT car against another Super GT car down the main straight, and I'm going to take 8th position. So our next victim, so to speak, is a certain Mr. Donald Bump, would you believe? So let's try to reel him in and get the overtaking manoeuvre done as we head into the final sector of the lap. And it's a sector that I've never really been all that good at, but the more that I practice this race, the better I get. And I think a really good example of sort of perfecting your craft is I've been watching a guy called Aura, PX7 Aura, and he's one of the fastest players in the world, German player, and he's been hammering this race over and over and over again this week, and he's just really very quick at it. And it's just a really good example of putting the time in, putting the effort in, working on your craft and getting faster and faster and faster. And Fuji is never a circuit that I've really liked or been that good at, but the more that I play it, I think the more I like it and the better I get at it. So I will continue to try to improve, which I think my 128.8 lap time for qualifying can still be improved upon. But now we're going to meet what appeared to be my most difficult opponent in this race. I was making fairly good progress through the pack. I'm here in 7th position as we go on to lap 7, setting the fastest lap of the race at 131.3. So the Brazilian defence to the inside, that's okay. We're going to go to the outside instead. Are we going to be able to go around the outside? Not quite. A tiny bit of contact through the apex, and I'm kind of just run wide onto the artificial grass. I just had to back out the throttle because we know what happens when you try to accelerate on that AstroTurf on the edge of the curb. You just lose control of the car, and Barry R is not a person I want to meet right now. We're going to have to try to live to fight another day. So we're going to have another attempt here against the Brazilian. This was quite frustrating because I was making good inroads towards the leaders, and I was about 5 or 6 seconds behind. Now I'm 7 seconds behind, so I'm losing time in this battle. So once again, he's going to cover the inside line, move over to the right, and for some reason he just wanted to make contact with me. So he's still turning left into me on the straight. Really not quite sure exactly why that is. I attempt the old switcheroo, and like we've seen earlier, not quite going to work. Well, it almost is, as we then go side by side towards the fast left and I'm not in a favourable position. There's going to be contact on the apex, and we're still going to go side by side through this corner, at least momentarily, before I kind of shove past and unfortunately get myself a half-second penalty. Not for the shove, actually for the track limits. So I'm not sure what the hell is going on right now, but certainly the stewards are certainly watching a different race compared to this one that's actually happening right now. Down in towards the turn 10 braking point, yellow flag momentarily there. Looks like the car in front just recovering from a crash or a spin, not sure what, but it's not going to matter anyway because I'm going to serve this half a second penalty in 1 corner's time. After the final corner, it's a really horrible place to have to serve penalties at the beginning of a very long straight. It really does kill your momentum in the race. And yeah, let's see how much time we lose. In fact, I have actually gapped the Brazilian a fair amount here. So I am going to drop back. We've actually, we're going to get the slipstream of that guy. No, he's ghosted out still. The Brazilian is going to go through. So we've gained one, we've lost one again. So the equilibrium has been restored and I remain in 6th position, would you believe? Right up to the back of the Brazilian. Can I finally get the job done on this guy? He really has proven to be a thorn in my side for this race. I was making really good progress, doing 131 lap times, and then I meet this guy. Suddenly I'm doing 133s, 134s, and oh my goodness, the Canadian going flying into barrier there with a 90-degree rendezvous point through the exit of turn 15. A perpendicular meeting between a Canadian and barrier. But the more important pressing matter right now is trying to get past the Brazilian. I had to do something different because this guy was really getting on my nerves, and it seemed like no matter what I did, he would just always stay in front. So I thought I'd move out to the outside, last possible second, perform the old switcheroo. He's gone in too hot, and finally, finally, we get the job done. Took maybe about 4 laps too many, and he dragged me into a fight I really did not want to be in. And to be fair, you know, it was a good little fight. Sometimes a bit aggressive at times, but eventually got the job done. Move up into 4th at this point here, and looks like 3rd place again, recovering from some sort of mistake there on the very tight corner. Turn 10, 11, 12, a very tight sequence of corners. Not easy to get dead right in this car. Moving up into 3rd then, with 2 laps left to go. Now, all that fighting with the Brazilian has really sort of dented my credentials of a race win. The gap up to about 7 seconds at this point here. Going purple though, we could go a little bit quicker than the 31.3, which is the current quickest lap in the race. Set a couple of laps ago on lap number 6. Now, I was trying to hunt down this Canadian driver, and the gap was coming down. 1 second at this point here. So I felt as though there was potential for a second place finish, which wouldn't be too bad given we started 14th and all of the stuff that happened, all the penalties, all the fighting. I think that would be a solid return for Mr. Scott Chegg. I think we've got to put our hands together and say that was a pretty good performance from Mr. Speed. Up the inside into turn 15. He turns in as if I wasn't there. There was some contact, but I felt like it was a good move. And then we're going to take the normal racing line here, not going to defend it, into the final corner. So we take 2nd position with 1 lap remaining in the race, and with a 6-second gap to Penaldo, looks like Cristiano on his alternative American account. We're going to cross the line eventually, and ironically enough, Penaldo gets a penalty. And it's a 1-minute penalty for not using the medium tyre. There it is. And that moves him way down the order to 7th. And it moves Scott Chegg into 1st place. Absolutely incredible scenes here at Fuji. But I really hope you enjoyed this video. Do drop a like if you did. Get yourself subbed to the channel if you're new. And in the meantime, have a nice day. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.